Voices of the Night, the calls of the frogs, toads, and tree frogs of the United States and Canada, recorded by the Laboratory of Ornithology at Cornell University. It is raining. The woods and fields and gardens are being drenched with life-giving water. Ponds form, and roadside ditches fill. And now, as if by a miracle, come the frogs and toads to fill the air with their strange calls, as each in his own way, and at the top of his voice, endeavors to find his mate. It is the object of this record to present to you the songs of 34 of the commoner species, that you may learn to enjoy a phase of nature hitherto restricted to a few ardent herpetologists. Part 1. Early in the spring, the calls of the tiny spring peeper, Hyla crucifer, are heard throughout the East, during the day as well as the night, a mighty effort from so small a creature. Now a deafening chorus of peepers, in which a single common tree toad adds his trill. Recorded May 6th at Ithaca, New York. The common tree toad, Hyla versicolor, a larger species, also is found throughout eastern United States and Canada, but its startling trill is seldom heard before the nights are warm. Now a chorus in which the tree toads are joined by a few banjo-like green frogs. Recorded June 6th at Ithaca, New York. The call of the green tree frog, Hyla cinerea, a more slender species, is a familiar sound in the southern United States. It will now be heard as it sang on April 3rd near Gainesville, Florida. The ringing quality of distant calls has given rise to the local name of cowbell frog. The chirping of cricket frogs and the grunt of a southern bullfrog also can be heard. Part 2. Resembling the green tree frog, but more beautifully marked, is Anderson's tree frog, Hyla andersonii, found from central New Jersey to North Carolina. Cricket frogs and a barred owl are heard in the background. Recorded April 6th, near Pinehurst, North Carolina. The second largest of our native tree frogs is Hyla gratiosa, sometimes called the barking frog, found from North Carolina to Louisiana. A peeping oak toad, a trilling southern toad, and a rattling swamp cricket frog are in the background. Recorded April 13th, near Statesboro, Georgia. A much smaller and more slender species is the squirrel tree frog, Hyla squirrella, found from Virginia to Texas. A southern toad calls in the background. This was recorded in the same pond with the preceding species. Later in the season, and away from water, its voice seems more squirrel-like. Now, on April 11th, a swelling chorus from the bird-voiced tree frog, Hyla abavoca, vibrates through the swamp at Indian Island, Georgia, fading as gradually as it starts. A red-eyed vireo, a hooded warbler, and a red-bellied woodpecker also are calling. Close to the microphone, a single male now sounds his bird-like trills near Midville, Georgia. A pine woods tree frog, Hyla femoralis, sounds his Morse code on May 30th from a shallow woodland pond near Gainesville, Florida. Part 3. The largest of our North American tree frogs, the giant tree frog, Hyla septentrionalis, is a recent invader from the West Indies. It now calls from a roadside pond on Upper Matecumbe Key, Florida, the night of September 30th. A narrow-mouthed toad bleats faintly in the background. Now on the same evening, in another pond, the narrow-mouthed toad, Microhyla carolinensis, makes the air resound with his sheep-like calls. This little toad is scarcely an inch long and ranges from Florida to Texas and northward to Maryland and Illinois. The spadefoot, Scaphiopus holbrookii, is a burrowing toad, found locally throughout eastern United States. It is smaller than the American toad, has a smoother skin, and its eyes have vertical pupils. It migrates to the ponds during spring or summer only after heavy rains. Recorded March 16th with ornate chorus frogs near Beachton, Georgia. Another small but more slender species, which is found in gardens and hammocks in many parts of Florida, is the Bahamian tree frog, or Rickard's frog, Eleutherodactylus rickardii. It normally hides under debris and does not seek out ponds for either singing or egg-laying. One will now be heard chirping in a Miami garden on May 24th with a bobwhite in the background. From Virginia to Louisiana, one of the commonest tree frogs is the cricket frog, Acris gryllus. It resembles a small true frog more than other tree frogs in having smaller discs on its toes. Its sharp, clear calls can be heard in the background of most of these recordings made in the southern states. Recorded April 11th at Statesboro, Georgia. Part 4. Swamp cricket frogs resemble peepers and, in one variety or another, are found throughout most of the United States east of the Sierras. The individual notes are more regularly trilled than are the calls of peepers. First, a recording of the southern swamp cricket frog, Pseudacris negrita negrita, made April 13th, near Statesboro, Georgia. Next, the eastern swamp cricket frog, Pseudacris nigrita ferriarum, recorded May 12th near Centerton, New Jersey, with a peeper in the background. And now, the western swamp cricket frog, Pseudacris nigrita tricereata, recorded May 1st at Rochester, New York. The least tree frog, Pseudacris ocularis, found from North Carolina to Florida, is the smallest of our North American frogs and toads, no larger than a honeybee, with a tinkling insect-like call. Recorded February 26th, near Gainesville, Florida. More conspicuously marked than the other swamp crickets is the ornate chorus frog, Pseudacris ornata. First, a single frog, calling with the preceding species. Next, a whole chorus, recorded March 16th, near Beachton, Georgia, against a background of spadefoot toads. Part 5. One of the best-known amphibians of eastern United States is the American toad, Bufo americanus. The loud musical trill of the males is a familiar sound during spring. Recorded May 3rd at Ithaca, New York. From Labrador to Hudson Bay, the northern variety, known as the Hudson Bay toad, Bufo americanus copi, sounds a similar trill from the edge of a pond near Tabatcher, Quebec, about noon on a windy day, June 17th. From North Carolina to Florida, the American toad is replaced by the southern toad, Bufo terrestris. Its shrill voice, however, is nearly an octave higher and is heard in a deafening chorus from roadside ponds. A lower-voiced common tree toad also is heard. Recorded April 12th, near Statesboro, Georgia. The western toad, Bufo cognatus, found throughout the Great Plains, has a terrific voice, and in early June the ponds of the wide open spaces sound like boiler factories. Here is one 33-second ear-splitting blast from a single individual recorded on June 8th near Upham, North Dakota. A small toad of the pine woods from North Carolina to Louisiana is the oak toad, Bufo quercicus. Its single call is a chick-like peep, but it too may be heard in a resounding chorus after a warm rain. With it are heard also a southern toad, a swamp cricket frog, a barking frog, and a tree toad. Recorded April 13th near Statesboro, Georgia. Part 6. Fowler's toad, Bufo woodhousei fowleri, resembles the American toad more in appearance than in voice. It is found from southern New England to the Gulf Coast of Texas, and breeds later in the year than the American toad. A tree toad also is calling. Recorded July 18th on Long Island, New York. The meadow frog, Rena pipiens, is the commonest of the true frogs, family Renidae, and is widespread over North America east of the Pacific states. The northeastern form, Rena pipiens pipiens, will now be heard amid a chorus of peepers. Recorded April 29th at Ithaca, New York. The southern meadow frog, Rena pipiens phenocephala, of the southeastern states as far north as Virginia, can be heard nearly every month of the year. Here it dominates a pond full of tree toads, cricket frogs, and swamp cricket frogs. Recorded April 12th near Statesboro, Georgia. The pickerel frog, Rena palustris, resembles a small brown meadow frog with yellow under the hind legs. Its snoring call can be heard in cool places throughout North America east of the Rockies. Now it will be heard with a single peeper. Recorded April 19th near Centerton, New Jersey. Part 7. A familiar frog of the forests of eastern United States and Canada, north of South Carolina, is the wood frog, Rena sylvatica, plain brown in color with a blackish mask. It starts calling soon after the ice disappears from the ponds. Recorded April 27 near Ithaca, New York. The sphagnum frog, Rena virgatipes, is less well known. It is found in the bogs of New Jersey and southward to Georgia. About the size of a wood frog, it has yellowish stripes on its back. recorded May 11th near Chatsworth, New Jersey. The mink frog, Rena septentrionalis, is another unfamiliar species, ranging from northern New England and northern Minnesota north to Hudson Bay. It resembles a small green frog with black markings on its sides. This chorus was recorded July 15th at Elk Lake in the Adirondacks, New York, with a distant waterfall in the background. The gopher frog, Rena capito, is found from North Carolina to Florida, where it usually lives in the burrows of the gopher turtles, but migrates in the spring to nearby ponds to lay its eggs. The coarse, drawn-out snores of the males will now be heard singly and then in chorus. Now the chorus competing with least tree frogs and Florida winter frogs, Pseudacris negrita verrucosa. Recorded February 25th near Silver Springs, Florida. Part 8. A more familiar frog of about the same size as the gopher frog is the green frog, Rena clamitans, found throughout eastern North America. Listen to its banjo-like calls, heard at sunrise, when the redwings, song sparrows, and swamp sparrows start singing. Recorded June 7th near Ithaca, New York. The southern bullfrog, Rena grillio, is an aquatic species found along the Gulf Coast from Louisiana to Florida and southern Georgia. It resembles the common bullfrog in appearance, but its grunting calls are very different. recorded July 14th from Anhinga Trail in the Everglades National Park, Florida. The largest of the North American frogs is the bullfrog, Rena kitzbiana. It is found in larger ponds and lakes from Canada to Mexico, east of the Rockies. In the background will be heard cricket frogs, barking frogs, and least tree frogs. Recorded April 13th near Statesboro, Georgia. Song stimulates song, and soon they sing in chorus. And now, as the evening wears on, it grows cooler and ardor wanes.